this thing working? Give me some sound over here.
Yeah.
The Out of Bounds Show is powered by the award-winning golf courses at Dancing Rabbit Golf Club in Philadelphia, Mississippi.
And your SEC Insider Hit this morning is brought to you by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi. It's good to be blue, the official healthcare provider of the Out of Bounds Show. Good morning. Welcome in. Hope you're doing well. Man, oh man, LSU escapes Fayetteville, Arkansas. We said they'd be hungover, and they were. And guess what? A win's a win. SEC, punched their ticket in year one. And we had people asking the question, will Brian Kelly fit at LSU? Because he had only coached in the Midwest. Well, so had Nick Saban, other than the Houston Oilers. And I think he kind of fit at LSU and has fit at Tuscaloosa, which is, the rural Sun Belt for the most part. So Brian Kelly is on fire at LSU. We welcome in LSU Saints insider Mike Detillier, Mike D, on the Yuengling Lager guest line, WWL Radio TV New Orleans. And he joins us on ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Mike D, a win's a win. And the Tigers did what they needed to do when everything was going against them. And that's a sign of a good team, right?
Yeah, no question about it. And, Brian had sort of put the onus on the football team because it was a little different delivery than what we've heard from when Les Miles was here and with Coach O. That it was always sort of, they took the approach, it's my responsibility to get them to play, to get them up, get them ready after a big win. Brian sort of threw this on the players that, hey, what's at stake. We are going to prepare you and give you the game plan. Now you go out and execute it. It was a little different take on it than what basically, people that have covered this team for a long time had heard from a head coach. He was basically saying, hey, it's your responsibility. I know I'm going to get you ready, and I'm going to give you a game plan, and you go out and do it. So I think what he's doing here is giving out some personal responsibility issues that, hey, it's up to you. You know what was at stake Saturday. And defensively, you really couldn't have asked for too much better of a game than how they played. And Perkins was just unbelievable. And, we were talking about it a couple weeks ago before the Alabama game. And Wilson Alexander, who covers LSU for The Advocate, had asked me, Mike, you've done this for a little while. Have you seen a freshman like Harold Perkins? And I said, the only guy that I know that I could remember played at that level of impact was Honey Badger. Tyrann Mathieu, as a freshman, sort of tilted the field. I mean, they used him all over. And he was that type player. And so that got a lot of, coverage because in the next two games against Alabama and Arkansas, you just saw what type of guy, what type of football player. Now, what I don't get is these asinine announcers that kept saying, well, wait till he learns how to play the game. My thing is, he knows how to play the game.
Right.
You can't do that and not know what you're doing. Now, you can get better maybe with coverage part of the game and knowing what to do on every play, but come on. That spin of that he doesn't know how to play the game, if that's the case, then anybody could do it. But he's not anybody. He is a special player, and his football instincts and his ability to bend so low and get around the corner as a pass rusher and to run the field, who he reminds me a lot of is the late, great Derek Thomas
Yes.
when he was at Alabama.
Wow.
That's who he reminds me of, because people say comparison. He reminds me of Derek. When I saw Derek at Alabama, it's very similar in a lot of ways in the way he can run the field and rush the quarterback. And they've got another guy there who they think a lot of too, and he's a true freshman who they've moved to middle linebacker, and Demario Tolan, who's backing up Micah Baskerville. He had back surgery in the summer, Tolan did. And the coaching staff kind of gives you that look of wait till he hits the field, too. And next year you'll have two of them. You have two sophomores. And Tolan, now I'm not trying to say Tolan's as good as with Harold Perkins, but they think he's going to be a special player, too. But Harold, I've not seen anybody as a freshman at LSU play that well, other than Honey Badger. Derek Stingley Jr. did a really good job as a freshman. I thought he was a very good player as a freshman at LSU. But he didn't tilt the field like what Perkins did. And you can see Arkansas was trying to do everything to stop him and couldn't. He just sort of took over like, hey, guys, I got it. How many 18-year-olds can do that?
He's a great player. All right, so why do you think this has worked so well so fast? Brian Kelly, he won everywhere. I think Grand Valley or Central Michigan, and Cincinnati and Notre Dame and so on. He won everywhere at every stop. Why? I understand he walked into a good situation. It's not like when you take over at Mississippi State or Ole Miss. And I know Ed let some things get away from him. But why has this worked so well so fast, Mike?
Man, I wish I had a good answer for that. But he was able to blend talent that was here from the prior regime. And I thought the key part was getting into the transfer portal and rebuilding his secondary and his offensive line and the freshman players. That's the other thing that I'll point out. I don't remember another time when you had two starting offensive linemen and two tackles, Emory Jones and Will Campbell, true freshmen. Mason Taylor at tight end, true freshman. Harold Perkins, linebacker, true freshman. Four guys make that type impact on an LSU team. I don't recall four freshmen like that.
That's unheard of, Mike.
And to think that Tolan may be a part of it too, somewhere down the line this year. So, man, I don't know, Bo. It blended well, but I think what he has done is changed sort of attitude and responsibility, and that I'm going to hold you accountable. He knew he had talent. And I go back, this was during the fall drills, summer drills in August, and he came on with Bobby Hebert and I asked him about how he felt about Vegas saying, he thought it was 6.5 and a 7 win team. And he laughed and he was like, Mike, I didn't come here to win 7 games. And he was blunt about it. And it was Brian Kelly being Brian Kelly that, man, listen, I ain't come here to win those 7 games. And he's a good coach. I think you see where he surrounded himself with good assistants and a really good support staff. And so it's all worked. Now, it's improbable because after week 1, no one would have thought that. They were all miscombobulated, this football team, against Florida State. You had breakdowns on the field on special teams. You didn't play particularly well on offense. And then you lose, arguably, your best defensive player in Mason Smith on, the third play of the game?
Mm-hmm.
And you say, man, they can get to 7 wins. Maybe you'll be lucky. But he pieced it together, and he got them believing in themselves. And he told, I guess it was a month ago we had him on, he said there comes a point for a head coach where you start believing in what we're teaching will work. And he said, I think that's the biggest thing for a football team. You start believing that we're going to put you in the best spot and we're going to give you the best opportunity to win. He said it happens to every coach, for every team. There comes that moment. Was that moment maybe after the Tennessee game? Because this team has certainly turned the corner since. They got drilled that Saturday afternoon against Tennessee. I mean, they just got it every which way but loose. And afterwards, they played with a sense of confidence that I didn't know really they had.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure Brian knew they had. But, man, it clicked. And now in a almost fairy tale type setting, you headed to Atlanta to play Georgia in the SEC championship game.
Hey, Mike, so will you compare, you've witnessed both, Mike Detillier, LSU Insider on the Yuengling Lager guest line. Will you compare Saban taking over to Brian Kelly taking over?
It's got some similarities, but it didn't happen as fast with Nick. You didn't see this cut. Now, I will say Nick probably didn't inherit, even though there was probably, for in that 40s range of players, he didn't inherit as much talent. When Nick came here, that wasn't a B.J. Ojolari and an Ali Gay and a Jaqueline Roy played terrific against Arkansas. A Micah Baskerville, a Jay Ward, that receiving core, which is, with the exception of one, Karen Lacey, they were all hangovers from the Coach O time frame. Their running backs, Josh Williams and John Emery and Armani Goodwin, those were all guys that were here before. He didn't inherit as much from Curly Holman as what Brian did, but it's a different world because you saw mass exodus, so to speak. But there are some similarities in that personal responsibility, and you're going to play as a team, and we're going to win. It's happened much quicker with Brian, but there are some similarities in how they handle things and how they do things and how they wanted to change the culture of what was around the team. And there was still almost remnants, Bo, of they were in the back of the limousine still waving to the crowd from 2019. I think that sort of hung over on this team. They were still basking in 2019. You got to let that go. You got to move on. And I've said this before, the hardest thing in life is handling success. It's not about failure. It's about handling any amount of success. Some people got a difficult time with it. And that's going to be interesting how Brian makes that twist now. Because now you've got some success, how you handle it. And I thought Saturday was a great example of you knew what was at stake. You didn't play particularly well. This was a big game for Arkansas. This was their bowl game to knock off LSU, and you came out with a win. I thought they handled that situation really well. And you're going to win a lot of different ways, okay, in football. You're going to win some games, you're going to win with your offense. Some games, it's all across the board. Some games you win with your defense, and that's what they did. So I think they handled it pretty well, really, really well. And you look at that schedule, if I'd have told you before the season, hey, Bo, guess what? LSU will be a 10-win team. you'd have said, Mike, it's your last time you on this program.
Well, all right. If LSU goes to A&M and hammers them in what is a first year and supposed to be transition, although Brian's kind of already leapfrogged that, and they're going to Atlanta the next week and all that. That's awesome. But if he goes and wins by 14, 17 plus, do you think A&M will make a move, Mike?
I've heard nothing about them making a move. And I've talked to a few people there that I trust pretty well about would the boosters do it. They've talked about making assistant coaching changes, things to that sort. But you never know how sometimes events sort of take over, more so than you might think. But I've heard nothing about. Now I've heard it media-wise that they would make that change, but I've heard it nowhere else from people who either cover the team or are involved in maybe cutting them a check. Let me put it to you that way. What I'm interested in seeing is you don't go from where they were a year ago to having the number one recruiting class in the country. How does some of those players feel about it? And are you just putting off the inevitable? And Texas A&M had always sort of picked off a player or two from Louisiana, but it wasn't maybe the high-profile player. They came in Louisiana and got 3 last year.
That's over.
So, that may not be the case anymore. But to answer your question, I've not heard it from anybody. What I would say is a credible source that would get rid of Jimbo. But again, events sometimes happen very quickly. Jimbo at times has talked about that West Virginia job.
Oh, good grief.
No, because he's from that area.
Yeah, but Mike, that's like junior college compared to SEC.
It is. But you think about if something happened there, where would he land? And I think that would be the spot because he has spoke about it at times. People have brought up West Virginia. Think about a year ago at this time, Scott Woodward, the AD at LSU, was trying to convince him to go to LSU.
Wow.
And that's how he got the contract he got.
That'd be terrible.
And Scott, okay, it goes to show you sometimes the best moves in life are the ones you don't make.
No doubt.
And it didn't work. And he had made his choice. He was going to stay at College Station. He wasn't going to come to LSU or come back to LSU, where he was an assistant. And then, they turned a couple of different ways. They reached out to Lincoln Riley, and then Brian Kelly became the guy. And it sort of reminds me of something Sam Jankovic, who was the former AD at Miami, would tell me, that when you do a list of head coaches, and he was the guy who had Schnellenberger, Jimmy Johnson, Dennis Erickson, and he was like, I always had to go to my C, D, and E candidates. I always had that list a little bit longer because when we hired Jimmy, I was the only one who wanted Jimmy here. The Board of Regents didn't want Jimmy Johnson. They wanted me to promote from within.
Incredible.
And when I hired Dennis, his deal was, they were, who the hell is Dennis Erickson? They had no clue. Now, he said they didn't know who Butch was, Butch Davis, because he had been there as an assistant. But he said even Butch was a guy some people didn't want. So, he says when you look at it, sometimes that C, D, and E guy becomes the guy. And Brian wasn't the first choice of Woodward. No, he's never going to admit it. His ego won't let him. But he wasn't the first choice. That first choice was Jimbo. because he had a connection with Jimbo when he was at A&M. And so, it's interesting how 1 year and what has happened in that time frame for both coaches. And we had a lot of people on. I did a show that night when Brian got hard. There was a lot of negativity out there. I always thought Brian was a really good coach. And my feeling is Les Miles really had no ties to the South, and he won big here. And Nick won big at LSU. Both won national championships here at LSU. But there was a lot of negativity out there. Now, some of the LSU fans that said it now, man, you put them on the Bible would blow up on their hands because they would swear to you they never said it, but they were the first one calling and complaining about it. It just, everything worked, and it worked right. And so now you look at it and how well he's recruited, and that was the big complaint during the summer. Oh, why is Alabama and A&M getting all these commitments and we not? And my thing is, okay, there's got to be a little time for him to connect the dots with high school coaches, with players in the area. He didn't know those players from the state of Louisiana. Now look at him now. They're in the top 3 or 4 in recruiting. But everybody's impatient. Everybody's impatient with it. But man, it's worked tremendously for Brian, and you know what? He's the right guy at the right time for LSU.
Yeah. All right, we'll leave it there. Mike Detillier on the Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. We'll ask Mike next week if Lane Kiffin's going to be the next coach for the New Orleans Saints. But we'll just let that marinate, and we'll just leave it there because Ole Miss fans are freaking out over the Auburn opening, and we'll just see how it all plays out. Mike D, thank you, buddy. Take care.
Thank you, Bo. Appreciate it.
WWL Radio TV New Orleans, the guys everywhere. At Mike Detillier on Twitter. One of our best guests and one of the best moves we ever made 10, 11 years ago when we started bringing Mike on to give us LSU Saints and then that NFL draft stuff, the Manning Passing Academy, and all that kind of good stuff. Mike D joins us on the Yuengling Lager guest line. You can pick up Yuengling Lager at corner, market, grocery stores in the state of Mississippi, including in Macomb, Hattiesburg, Jackson, Belhaven, Northside Drive, Fondren, and Corner Market grocery stores coming to Starkville, Mississippi, which is a good thing. That's a really, really good thing. We're live in the Bank Plus studio, the Out of Bounds Show. Brought to you by Cypress Depot in Ridgeland. Check them out, cypressdepot.com. Their work in the commercial and residential industry is exceptional. cypressdepot.com. Cypress Depot located in Ridgeland. Also, Went McGee, the mortgage man, mortgagemanms.com. Went McGee, he'll shop the best rates for you. Went McGee, the mortgage man, mortgagemanms.com. And lunch today brought to you by Bulldog Burger. Amazing sandwiches and burgers. And they have Yuengling too. Bulldog Burger, Lake Harbor in Ridgeland. And Bulldog Burger in Starkville. And Bulldog Burger in Tupelo. I want to thank you for going to Apple Podcast, searching Out of Bounds with Bo Bounds. Apple Podcasts, search Out of Bounds with Bo Bounds. We appreciate you hitting up the podcast. Hour number 3 coming up. Out of Bounds. 105.9 The Zone, ESPN.